Johannes Robbrecht. I'm from the office of Robbrecht and Daem Architecten in Ghent. I'm a partner in the office, which was founded by my parents, Paul Robbrecht and Hilde Daem. I'll be talking today about several projects we did on Nieuw Zuid, Nieuw South in Antwerp, a site being developed, I think, for about 10 years, or at least 10 years ago. There was a first, where there was a competition, a master plan for this site. How to continue? Yes. Antwerp has been very kind to us in the last few decades. We're showing some of the projects that we've done. I think in the north of Antwerp, we're finishing a hospital. We have been working on the zoo of Antwerp, which was never executed. We are working on the Rubens house, which my father has been talking about already, I think. There are some houses as well, the Middelheim Museum, where we made a pavilion. And this site is Nieuw Zuid, Nieuw South. It used to be a former railway station. And even earlier, it was a Spanish fortress. You can see the river here, the Scheldt, going towards the sea in that direction. This is the Intramuros, Antwerp, and this is, of course, Extramuros. This is the left bank, with some more high-rise, high-rise to Flemish conditions, buildings. Kind of idea about how Antwerp was, the urban planning of Antwerp. So this is Nieuw Zuid. These are the quays of along the Scheldt, and this is the development and urban planning around the north of Antwerp, with Eilandje, which is being translated as the small island. The hospital we're doing is here. What you can see here is already a first master plan done by Toyo Ito, which had a kind of continuation here in a former dock, which is being filled and is now a square. This is this master plan of Toyo Ito, this kind of perpendicular housing rows, perpendicular on the Scheldt. He was talking about this kind of green fingers. I think there was a park or somewhere here. All the houses were elevated, so there was a kind of continuing open space on ground floor. This is this dock, which continues further, of course, where he, as you can see on this image, this dock where he had this kind of subterranean development. I think it involved shops and stuff. And on the lower left side is this development, this master plan he did for the Nieuw South, Nieuw Zuid site. But further in time, this was a competition we did, the design proposal we did for Nieuw Zuid, which involved, I think, 8 quadras, we called them, kind of buildings around inner courtyards or gardens, also with this idea of green penetrations into the development. Another idea was, and in a way you will see it in the final master plan, which I will talk about later. This kind of idea of a kind of hard spine, we called it, a kind of street, square, that was a kind of continuation of a spine that was and is still leading towards the center of Antwerp. This is the kind of spaghetti traffic organization to go under the Scheldt. This is kind of main connection between one part of Flanders and the other part of Flanders. So it's a really crucial point in Flanders. A lot of traffic, and so this development is kind of interesting to deal with this. More graphic presentation. There was we proposed a football stadium, very actual at the moment, and it also involved high-rise towers combined with low-rise housing and some mid-rise blocks facing the river. As you can see, actually, on the image, is that not so long ago it still was a part of the harbor. It isn't anymore at the moment. They're finishing, I think, these quays and kind of promenade along the river. An image on the left bank of Antwerp facing our proposal for this development. But we didn't win this competition. It was Studio Secchi Viganò, Bernardo Secchi and Paula Viganò, and they also had this idea of a more central spine through the site, but combined this with this perpendicular organization of buildings, which they subdivided in 7 or 8 strigas, kind of rows of housing blocks, also a bit mid-rise to, I think, maximum 8 stories high, but mixed with some high-rise towers in between. And you can see this on these this image, and where they kind of alternated green penetrations with streets perpendicular to the river Scheldt. This is the courthouse by Rogers, I think, also from the 90s. And in this project of Secchi Viganò, we proposed 3 buildings, 2 of which will be built, and the first one that I will show that was a competition that that will not be built. It was in the 4th striga, an L-shaped building, housing. The site is mainly about housing and residential programs. What's interesting to say, and probably already known, is that the master plan of Secchi Viganò introduced this idea of panoramas, open places where development and houses would be able to look upon. You see them everywhere in the master plan appearing. And they were important because if building would face such a panorama, this side of the building could have winter gardens. So they introduced this kind of play of rules and a set of rules where you had to design with, which and which finally end up in a kind of perhaps unexpected building. So this first building I'm showing, which actually was the second building that we designed for the site, is a tower with kind of low-rise buildings next to it, and where we were designing, where we added a few rules to ourselves. In our office, we have this kind of metric system, which we call the Louis. Perhaps not going to explain it completely, but it deals with the numbers 3, 5, and 7, multiplications between them, and so on. And we also use them in this way to come to kind of score, partitur, we call this in Dutch, kind of score where the order of the building is guided by these numbers. So we have, for example, 9 sections of each time 3 levels. Every level is about 3 meters 15, which is also a Louis number. There's a kind of order of 1, 3, 5, which will be visible in the facade, and a kind of shift that we had in this facade. I'm going the wrong direction. As you can see, there's a kind of shift in this facade of these 3 according and relating to this 5. So this was a kind of play that we added to the set of rules by Secchi Viganò. The shift is revealed by these winter gardens that kind of shift. Yeah, and the building was, of course, a concrete structure, but these terraces and winter gardens were made out of steel, and where we wanted to, where we invented or were trying to make this kind of folded columns. Perhaps it's a bit difficult to see in the images, but there were kind of folded sheets of steel where they would become narrow and wide, kind of, well, it's not completely Brancusi, but in a way it played on our heads that this kind of endless column by Brancusi. So yeah, these winter gardens and terraces were become this kind of outside, inside spaces, sometimes as a winter garden, but as you can see, probably is also sometimes as more simple windscreens where people could be more comfortable in. The second building I'm going to show is this, actually the first one we designed, and we were lucky to be one of the first on site. Is this one? It's kind of straight volume. It has only one direction. Which also is dealing with this idea of the winter gardens, overlooking, and that's perhaps what you can see. There is a park connecting the river side to a larger park side. So in between there is a kind of wide connection of green, what we already call a park in Flanders, and of which the building does have one side overlooking this park and have winter gardens on that side. These well, we always were thinking of these winter gardens as a kind of theater boxes, which with kind of oblique lines, so that they would be able, you can perhaps see this, this kind of idea of boxes, so that they would be able to have a kind of very oblique view towards the river and overlooking the park. On ground level, it's kind of very the kind of transparent part of it with bicycle parkings. We like the idea of having a very small bar at the corner as an introduction to the site. So it's this point on the side where people would enter by bike or as pedestrian the side, so that it's really nice to have a drink on that place. And there are some duplex units at the end of the ground floor. The section, one part on one side it's a street, on the other side is this idea of the park with winter gardens. There's a kind of transparent and open ground floor connecting both of them, both sides. On top we have a garden. Again, this more detailed plan of the ground floor, the small bar, the more transparent zone of the building where we connect street and park, and three double floor units. This is this idea of the winter garden overlooking or looking towards the Scheldt or overlooking the park. This building is a social housing block, will disappear, and it will be replaced by a building by Peter Zumthor, which will be, of course, a nice view too for us. And all units have this kind of have the kind of qualities of both sides. So on the one side the street, on the other side the park. So the units connect both of them. And on top, as a kind of social meeting place for the inhabitants of the building, there's a garden with small pavilions on top, where people can find some comfort when raining, but where they also, of course, come where the staircases are, and they come on this garden. We wanted to make a kind of omnidirectional building, so this idea of winter gardens facing the park is in a way translated to the street side with windscreens, and of course a kind of well, the idea of the terraces going around the building, and well, this idea of glass panels, on the one side being winter gardens, on the other side being windscreens. At the moment, the site is much greener. The trees are bigger. The building was just finished when these photos were taken. The last building that I would like to show is a building that's not yet constructed. We will start in August. It's a C-shaped building between the Johannes Norlander apartment block and the Max Duller apartments that are on this side. And on this side is the Stefano Boeri building. This is a DRDH building. So we're in between this, and one of the early ideas that we wanted to develop was these two buildings were, at the moment we started to design this building by Johannes Norlander and the building by Max Duller were known, they were designed. And we wanted to use them as a kind of ending of the ground floor and public terrain. So we wanted to make a building where the ground floor was ended not by our building, but by these two walls of Johannes Norlander and Max. The volumetry, the mass modeling was trying to mediate between the heights of the adjacent housing blocks. Again, Max Duller on the one side, but also a lower part where we wanted to have a more nuanced dialogue with Johannes Norlander design, or with the Boeri volume. This is a plan of the ground floor where we wanted to. So these are the facades, the line of facades of Max Duller and the one of Johannes Norlander. On the one side, a street. On the other side, a more park or garden feeling, also with a public path going through. The C-shaped volume kind of surrounds a garden, which is probably open to the public, but it has some privacy nonetheless. But it's really, this plan is really about making this ground floor as open as possible for and creating views through the building. There is an entrance to the underground parking. There are bicycle sheds. There is kind of more play area on this central street I was talking about. There are some shops or office spaces. Again, an image to show the kind of how the volume tries to mediate between the different surrounding volumes and this open ground floor area. Again, from view seen from the Max Duller building, the open ground floor. What you already can see is that in a way we reused this idea of the winter gardens as we did in the previous building, but translated them in a slightly other way. We wanted to create this idea of bay windows where you would be able to step out a bit of the building and have a look around. What we see, of course, is the idea of a garden on top. This time it's not, perhaps it's a pity, but on the other hand not. it's this kind of private garden for a small unit on top of the building. We also wanted to, as a kind of first idea, we said we want to make a red building, and we were referring to the Indian palace Fatehpur Sikri, which is really beautiful reddish natural stone. And this idea of the facade being this color, but also having this kind of layered building up this facade in this way, with the red facade, the winter gardens, and the shape, the contour of this facade. So we tried to find a way to really to make this winter garden as fine as possible, as thin as possible, whereas the facade is really more stony and more materialized. View from the ground floor. Didn't know if you noticed, but in the previous building, the ceiling was blue, light blue. Again, we tried to use elements of the previous design and translate them in the new building. And now this time we will make the ceiling very light, yellowish, more amber colored ceiling. In this image is still greenish, but that we changed. Yeah, some views from the street. I believe it's actually from the quay, so this view seen from the riverside, where the winter gardens are filling the complete facade. You see the Max Duder building next to it with its very rigorous order and facade, and ours, which is perhaps a bit more undulating. The fifth floor with the garden on top. Some more commercial images made by the developer, but probably gave a good view on what this atmosphere will be. A night view to end my small talk about the projects. And a view of the construction site at, well, this is the Johannes Robbrecht building, so it has already probably from, 1 year ago, this image. Meanwhile, this building is finished. The tower of the RDH is also probably on full height. And I know they're building the Johannes Robbrecht block as well. Thank you.
At Brickworks Vande Moortel, we make high-quality bricks, slips and clay pavers in unique colors and sizes. To support architects around Europe and the UK, we created a brand new high-end brick lab, housing the latest in ceramic innovations. Built on more than 150 years of experience, we bring together tradition with the architecture of tomorrow. Every brick, slip and clay paver in our brick lab is part of a research and development program creating new knowledge and insights. Working together with architects, we can thus reach higher levels of sustainability, quality and circular solutions, combining them with the highest design standards of today. All this without losing our passion that we would love to share with you.